like that I was great that I gave them a lot of them. So you get your protein, a little bit of cheese.
Good evening, everybody. I trust you can hear me okay. I can hear myself like 3 times worth. My name is Peggy Shapansky. I'm a dietitian and my background is in exercise. And so I'm pleased, I'm super excited to be here and share with you some of my passions around nutrition. And specifically, I'm angling this conversation tonight around nutrition for your success in the fitness challenge, okay? Nutrition's a huge topic, right? Nutrition's a huge topic, and so in preparing for this, I thought, okay, I'm going to make some assumptions. One assumption is that you all are probably having some fitness, fat burning, weight loss component to your goal around this challenge, right? Okay, so I've tried to frame the information and the concepts that I want to introduce to you today with that assumption. Glad I'm dead on with that. All right, so to get us started, what I want you to do this evening is walk away feeling really confident and armed with the information that you need to think about your eating plan today, concepts to optimize that eating plan, and armed with the information that you need to be able to make any changes if you're so inspired. For some of you, the information that I'm going to present this afternoon or this evening, whatever we're at, is just going to be some fine-tuning to an eating plan that you've already got established. But for some of you, what I'm going to introduce might be very, very different. But at the end of the day, it's nutrition concepts that are solid and angled, positioned to help you be successful in a challenge like the Infinity Fitness Challenge, a short-term challenge for weight loss and fat loss, okay? I'm also going to talk a lot about how we make this sustainable. How do we live like this forever? We can have some quick wins, but let's face it, weight loss isn't hard. Weight loss in a way that you can live with it is hard, very hard. It's a billion-dollar industry, so it's hard. So again, that's what I want to challenge you all with is, introducing some concepts and then challenging you to think about how they apply to you given your realities today. All right, so next slide. Because this is a fitness challenge and because I'm a group exercise instructor, I thought I'd frame it like a group exercise class. We're going to warm up. I'm going to allow you time to reflect on what your normal is today, okay? That'll be our warm-up. Then I'm going to introduce some concepts and kind of big chunk themes or intervals, if you will. We're going to talk some basics around weight management. I won't spend a ton of time in that because we probably already know it. Where I'm really going to spend some time tonight is digging deeper into nutrition and metabolism, because that's the secret sauce when we're trying to lose body weight and especially body fat. There's where the secret sauce and the magic happens. If we can understand that level, then we're golden, okay? Then you'll be successful in the long run. I'll arm you with some tips, tricks, and tools to help you along the way, and then we'll cool down. I'll pull you all together, pull all the concepts together, summarize what we've talked through, and leave you armed with an assessment of yourself and an action plan that you can consider taking, again, if you're so inspired. Make sense? Okay, so as I mentioned, we're ready to warm up a little bit. You have a worksheet in front of you. I want to ground your mind right now. I want to ground your thoughts. First, at the top of your worksheet, you'll see in red, My Infinity Fitness Challenge Mission. So I want you to this is for your eyes only. No one else will see it. You don't have to turn it in. This is just so that you can get the most out of our time together this evening, okay? So write down, what are you trying to accomplish in this challenge? What are you after? What will success be for you personally? Doesn't matter what the in-body said. What does it mean for you? How will you walk away from this fitness challenge feeling successful? What is your mission? Then, as you're canoodling on that, continue to canoodle. And down on that first page, you'll see my typical day. I'd like you to just reflect. I know every day is different. I know a work day is different than a weekend. I know a vacation. I know. So what is your typical day? When do you typically wake up? When is the first time that you put anything in, whether you drink it or you chew it? When's the first time that you eat and about what it is? Just take a quick guess. I'll give you about 3 minutes or so. Don't overanalyze it. Just quickly guess and just jot down your habits. What's your routine like typically? How you doing? Look at me when you're done so I have a good gauge of. Okay, if you're continuing to write down, please feel free to continue to finish jotting down your day, reflect on your day. What are your typical eating and drinking patterns? All right, now let's dig into some basics around weight management. Again, I don't intend to spend a lot of time here because we're going to go deeper today, and that's my intention, is to take you a little bit deeper in the world of weight management, weight loss, and again, your success in this challenge. So what do we know about weight loss? Well, what we know is calories in and calories out, right? We've learned probably that if you want to lose weight, we should eat less. Does that sound familiar? Cut calories, cut back, eat less, lose weight, success. Okay, what we're trying to do here, the basic fundamentals in weight loss is really an energy balance or unbalance. What we're striving for is to figure out how much energy or calories do I need in a typical day, given my height, weight, gender, age, activity level. All those kinds of factors give me an idea of how much energy or calories I need to maintain the weight that I am at, given all those factors, if those are to be maintained. Then I have a goal. Again, I'm assuming many of you your goal might be towards weight loss. And so we need to take that energy, we need to adjust it, right, for weight loss. So we need to adjust those calories, and then we need to live. And we, theoretically, if our body works like a calculator, we should be able to lose weight. But does that always happen? How many of you have done that and come up against a plateau or just not able to lose weight? Yeah. All right, so Weight Management 101, just calorie counting and understanding calories and the numbers alone will only get you so far. It will do outstanding if you've never paid attention to it in the past, then absolutely, it's a wonderful place to start. But what we've got to do is figure out below that. Once we've had success there and you've come up against a plateau, if you don't understand anything more than just the numbers game and playing math with calorie counting, then you will always come up against that plateau. So what we have to do is take weight management beyond just the 101 level, beyond the numbers game. Calories do count, but there's deeper understanding of how can I be successful? How do I push through those plateaus? And why? Because I calculate the numbers out, it falls right into my balance. Why am I not having the success that I did last time or 10 years ago? There's real reasons why, and it's called metabolism. And the opportunity here today is to understand that and to recognize that just like you can train your bicep, you can also train your metabolism. You might find through our conversation this evening that you've actually been training your metabolism to work against you. Believe it or not. 9 times out of 10, that's a conversation that I have with individuals and with groups. The reality is we grew up thinking if you want to lose weight, cut back on the calories. But you can actually cut back too far. And it can be just as detrimental to your ability to be successful in any weight loss plan, regardless of Infinity Fitness Challenge or whatever you change the title on. It will impair your ability to be successful. Okay, so we need to dig deeper than that. All right, so let's move on from weight management number 101. And let me ask you a few different questions here. How many of you have ever skipped a meal? You can give me a click. Yes, okay, how does that leave you feeling? Come on. It leaves us feeling, is anybody grouchy? Impatient, moody, mean. Yes, no? Okay, I'm getting lots of yeses. All right, give me a, okay, you got the picture there. All right, on the other end of the spectrum, how many of you have ever overeaten? Yeah, heck yeah. Right, all right, so how does that make us feel? Sluggish, tired, bloated. We don't have a whole lot of energy to go to that class, right? Or to do that commitment that I have for the fitness challenge. We don't have a lot of energy to do what we want to do. We've all felt those ways, and there's real reasons why we feel the way we feel. And the key here, and why I think this is so important, is because you can lose weight and actually feel good along the way. And that's what I want to unveil to you today around these concepts of metabolism. If I understand my numbers, my calories, my energy intake, but I understand how I need to apply it, man, not only will I have weight on the success on the scale, but I'll also feel great along the ride. And I think that's a key. Many times we go in and we want to lose weight, so we want to get on a challenge, and so we almost expect to feel yucky and impatient and moody with those that we love around us or work with. It doesn't have to be that way. And so again, that's part of what I want to unveil to you today. So let's dig in here and let's understand beyond just the simple weight management, calorie counting, that kind of stuff, which is important, it has its place, but there's so much deeper underneath that. We have to understand some nutrition basics. So I'm going to start with these first few slides, kind of go in there. And I'm oversimplifying because I love to oversimplify. I think we've made healthy eating and weight management way too complicated. So I'm a lover of keeping things simple. So as I've already said, calories are energy, energy is calories. So you'll hear me use those words interchangeably. I want you to know they mean the same thing. You can't have energy without putting calories in, okay? And vice versa. So calories equal energy, energy equals calories. All of the energy in the world, whether you drink it or you chew it, if it has calories attached to it, it comes from really only one of three places, a combination of three sources. We call them our macronutrients or our energy nutrients. You know them as carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Alcohol is another macronutrient in and of itself. We'll touch on that a little bit, but I'm going to keep most of our conversation bedded in carbs, proteins, and fats, all right? Those are our macronutrients. All of the energy in the world can only come from one or more than likely a combination of those three sources. Make sense? So far, so good? All of the calories in the world that you put in will break down, digest, and be metabolized, and they will hit your bloodstream in the form of glucose. Now, sometimes people say, what? I thought only carbohydrates were connected to blood glucose. And so this is a big point for you to understand. Carbohydrates, as well as proteins and fats, at one pace or another, and that's a key that I'll remind you of in a little bit, at one pace or another are digested, are metabolized, and hit your bloodstream in the form of glucose. Also, in terms of nutrition basics, there's a concept that I use all the time. And in the spirit of keeping things simple, I want to introduce it to you all tonight. And that is the fact that there are need foods and there are want foods. And my rule of thumb that I want to encourage you to live by, not only to get you through the Infinity Fitness Challenge, but more importantly, the need food, want food concept, that can be a lifelong tool that you can use to gauge a food choice. Need foods are, maybe as you get from the title, foods, calories, foods and beverages, calories or energy that have a function. There's a nourishment behind them. Want foods, on the other hand, taste great, have calories, have energy, probably not the best nourishment, but there's calories nonetheless. Sometimes they're referred to as empty calories. I'm sure you've heard that phrase before. So need foods and want foods. If you think about your grocery cart, if you think about your pantry at home, if you think about your cooler, whatever you want to think about, you can go through those staples that you find yourself typically buying or choosing and think about, are they a need food or are they a want food? Next slide, please. And the key here, the key concept that I want to leave you with on that topic is that need foods and want foods, if you choose 80% of the time, you're choosing food or beverages from the need food pile, but allow 20% of the time want foods to sneak into your day, your week, your month, however you want to think about your normal, that's a good, sustainable, lifelong plan. Next slide. So again, 80-20, 80% of the time, making those solid food choices. And it's not rocket science. I wish I could bling it up a little bit, but it's fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, those kinds of things 80% of the time. But allow yourself 20% of the time to let those sauces and gravies and alcohol and cake, I saw a question on Facebook about cake, let those things drip in, all right? If we tell ourselves, I have to be good 100% of the time, again, you'll be good for 6 weeks, 12 weeks. Who can rock their world? Anybody can rock their world for a certain amount of time, or until the book's done, or the challenge is over, or the family reunion happens, or the wedding, or you name it. But the idea is, how can you build these habits how can they become your new normal? That's breakthrough. That's what I want to get to today, okay? 80-20 is one of the concepts I want you to cling to and think about how that might apply to you and the rules that you set for yourself around healthy eating. Make sense? Okay, moving right along. Now let's dig a little bit deeper. This glucose connection. Remember when I said everything that you put in your mouth, whether you drink it or you chew it, if it comes from carbohydrates, proteins, or fats, at one pace or another, it will be digested and it will break down and it will hit your blood in the form of blood glucose. Remember when I said something like that? Okay, well, why? Why is that important in a weight loss fitness challenge type of a conversation? Here's why. There's a very, very powerful glucose connection in every single one of us, that if we understand it and if we feed it right, that's how you have sustainable weight loss for life, well beyond the Infinity Fitness Challenge, okay? We've got to understand the power of that glucose connection. So let's dig in there a little bit. First of all, we have to understand, as human beings, not just Midland people or even the United States, as human beings, doesn't matter my age, my ethnic background, we were all born with the ability to manage and metabolize glucose as our primary fuel for every cell in our body. Every cell in our body prefers glucose. When we perhaps don't have the greatest eating habits, our body can't rely on glucose. And so we have some backup systems as a human being. We have backup systems, but glucose is the preferred fuel. Our glucose levels are directly related to how we feel, why we feel certain things and ways, just like we reflected on earlier in our conversation. We said, how many of you have skipped meals, and what does that leave you feeling like, and how many of you have overeaten? What does that make you feel like? We have those feelings for real reasons, and it is tied to your blood glucose control. Make sense? Okay, so we have to recognize that there's a connection there, and our blood glucose levels are directly aligned with how good or bad we're feeling. And as human beings, as I mentioned, we're born with that ability to regulate glucose. As adults, we've learned to tune it out. We're really good at not listening and maybe buffering ourselves a little bit of caffeine. You know, caffeine masks hunger in everyone. So you're not going to feel all of the signs and signals that your body is telling you if you've got caffeine in your system. So again, my point is not to bash caffeine. We'll talk about that and how we can strategically pull it in. But my point is to recognize that we have the innate ability to regulate glucose. We just often we tune out. We've learned as adults how to get through, and we're busy. We're busy people. And so oftentimes we don't take the time to really tune in and listen to the signs and signals. As I mentioned already, every cell in our body, our brain, our muscle tissues rely and prefer glucose as their primary fuel source. And it doesn't just shut off at bedtime. Every cell is demanding energy. It demands it at a lesser amount in the overnight hours, but 24 hours a day, we're demanding that blood glucose. Okay, next slide. So what have I said so far? What about this glucose connection? And at this point, I want to hold you to some key messages for just a second here. First of all, I want you to know, if nothing else at this point, that what we put in our mouth is very much dependent on, is directly related to how good or bad, how energized or de-energized we feel. There is a strong connection, and it's rooted in our blood glucose level, okay? If we can manage that blood glucose, then we can manage not only by feeling good, but the secret sauce here, as you can see, is good glucose management. We also can train our metabolism to work better. Now, I say it that way because our metabolism is the rate that your body burns calories, okay? My body, my metabolism is not going to burn calories at the same rate that it did when I was 20. It can't. But if I'm not feeding it right, if I'm not managing my blood glucose right, then I'm slowing down that metabolic slowdown that comes with aging. I can optimize it at my age now. It will never be like it was in the 20s, but I can make it the best that it can be at my age. And that's what I want to invite you to cling to, is that we have an opportunity to not only understand our calorie needs to promote weight loss, but to understand how do we feed ourselves through our eating habits. On top of the calorie layer, how do we feed ourselves with our eating habits? And that's where the metabolism shift happens. And therefore, that's where lifelong weight management happens. Okay, next slide. So what's the secret? Any ideas? Okay. Easier said than done, huh? Okay, now think about this. How many of you have been around infants? Not maybe your own, but yes, you've been around infants. Thanks for the few that raised their hand. Yes, we've all been around them at one time or another. And we all know that when you bring an infant home from the hospital, what does it do? It cries. What do? We feed it the perfectly balanced nutritional formula, whether that be formula or breast milk. What does that infant do? It eats only enough to get it through the next 2 to 4 hours, and it repeats the cycle. Okay, all I want to introduce today is really nothing more than let's get back to how we as human beings were designed to operate and function. And believe me, we will find our metabolism optimized if we get back to that basic habit. Okay, now let me dig into how can we do that. Okay, this slide just really wanted to highlight what are the benefits. I think I've highlighted this already, but just to make sure, let me just go through. Eating light and eating often. In theory, why is that positive? What will that do for me? Well, not only will it stabilize my blood sugar or my blood glucose level, I'll also have an improved metabolism. That's the point that I've really tried to drill home today because it's so related to your Infinity Fitness Challenge. You'll see an improved metabolism. You'll have higher energy levels, as you can see. Brain function, your mood problems will go away. Yes. And therefore, it helps us to control our appetite and control cravings. I'll dig into that a little bit more too. It can help you maintain your muscle mass. Once again, you guys know this because you all probably had an in-body assessment done. You know how much muscle mass you have versus lean mass and water mass. And so what we want to do is preserve that muscle mass. It's so easy to really go gung-ho on a weight loss challenge and where you end up losing body water and muscle mass. What we want to do is train our body so that we can lose body fat. Again, that's the secret sauce. And one of the strategies for doing that is understanding from an eating perspective, how should I put my food in so that I can manage this blood glucose, okay? So we're going to dig into that in just a second. Okay, next slide. Okay, can you go back a slide, Adam? Thank you. All right, can everybody see my whiteboard here? I'm going to turn your attention. Can you see what I'm writing here? Yes, in the back row. So if you can't, please feel comfortable to come up a little closer. I explain this best when I draw it out. So I'm going to draw a few pictures, and I'm going to take you along on the ride with me, but I want to first explain my template. These lines here, this is to depict this blood glucose level that I've been talking about. If we can learn to manage it, within this zone here, just to make a visual for you. I'm oversimplifying human biochemistry, but you'll get it. It's really, really important. So this is that blood glucose zone, that optimal zone that I've been referring to. This F box up here is your fat stores. Here's your liver, the little box down here, the little L box. Muscle is your M box. B is your brain cells. Brain, muscle tissue, liver. blood glucose zone and fat. Over here, this is insulin man. Okay? So now I want to take you through 3 different scenarios and just work with me here. We're going to work on this, and I'm going to show you why we feel the way we feel and what we need to break through to get this deeper understanding for weight loss. Okay, so as I mentioned, we put calories in, whether you drink it or you chew it. What happens in every single one of us, with the exception of a type 1 diabetic, the only exception to this is a type 1 diabetic. We put food or beverages in that have calories. That food or beverage is metabolized, as you've heard me say, it's digested, it's metabolized, and at one pace or another, it's going to hit my blood in the form of glucose. And so at one pace or another, either fast or slow, we're going to see a rise in our blood glucose level, okay? Okay, it's fine, thanks. Okay, so we're going to see a rise in that blood glucose level. What happens when that blood glucose level rises in you and me and every single one of us in this room? What happens is that automatically tells your body, tells your pancreas specifically, to release a hormone, the hormone insulin. It has 2 jobs and 1 big rule in every single one of us that it has to follow, okay? Job 1. Remember when I told you that glucose is your body's preferred fuel source? But glucose can only float around in your blood. It can't get out of your bloodstream into your cells so that you can use it as a fuel source without the help of insulin. So again, when blood glucose rises, that triggers the pancreas to secrete the hormone insulin into our bloodstream. So insulin has 2 jobs. Job 1, insulin has to bind with that blood glucose. So insulin man comes out. It's binding with this blood glucose. Job 2 that insulin has is it's escorting that blood glucose into my cells, into my tissues, where it's used for immediate energy production. Make sense? Now remember I said this insulin man has a couple of jobs and 1 big rule that it has to follow. Here's the rule. Once insulin is secreted out into the bloodstream to help clean up and escort that glucose, it only has a couple of hours after you've eaten it to do that. Okay, end of scene 1. Going on to the second picture. Let me try and get another color here for effect. Okay, so our basic template remains the same. We've got our glucose zone, our boxes. All right, so we eat something, and in this scenario, we eat a whole lot of it. And so what happens? It's digested, it's broken down, it's metabolized, and it hits the blood glucose fast and furious, really high, because I overate. So tell me, what happens once that blood glucose rises? It doesn't matter how high or how long. What happens? The pancreas secretes insulin. I'll help you out there. And insulin does what? Binds and escorts. Oops, that arrow went to the wrong place. It binds and escorts that energy, that glucose, into the cells where it can be used. And it's working frantically in this scenario, and its goal is to get it within this optimal zone. Because remember, if we can manage our blood glucose level, then we feel great and we're managing our metabolism. But I just overate. Insulin was secreted. It's working. It's working. It's working. But ding, 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 the 2-hour bell went off. Uh-oh. Glucose wasn't pulled down into that optimal zone. Any guesses where this excess glucose goes? Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Yeah. Okay, so let me do scenario number 3. In this scenario, we are super busy in the morning. We wake up and we grab our black coffee and we go. So, how would I draw that? Black coffee, 0 calories, 0 energy, 0 impact on glucose. So I might feel good, or what I've trained myself to know as normal, all right? I might be grouchy, impatient, pain in the neck to be around. But again, that's what I know as normal. So, but what's happening underneath my skin doesn't change. Just because you're feeling okay, if I've had no energy, no calories, this is what's happening underneath my skin. We know it as hypoglycemia. You guys have heard, or we shared how we feel when we go long periods of time without eating or we skip meals. Some of us get shaky, moody, cranky, impatient, you name it. That's a reflection of low blood glucose. Okay, so what happens? Remember, I told you glucose is the preferred fuel, but our bodies are really, really well equipped, and we have a lot of backup systems that we can tell our body to tap into. And so that's what we do. In a situation like this, our blood glucose drops, and our body, we've got demands on our body. Even if we didn't go to a fitness class, we're still demanding energy, all right? We're still, and you guys know that. Remember when you had your in-body assessment done, you had a resting metabolic rate? Okay, that means at rest, your body is still requiring that many calories. And for most of us, that's a heck of a lot of calories still. So again, it's not just during a fitness class or just on workout days that your body needs this energy. It's all the time. And sometimes intensified on exercise days. But back to the picture. So when I'm not feeding my body the fuel that it relies on most and performs best with, then my body has to go into my backup tanks. So we have to understand my backup fuel tanks. One is this fat store over here. I can get about 9 units of energy if my body chooses to tap into this into this energy source, energy backup source. I can get about 4 units of energy if I use a little bit of the stored glycogen that's in my liver, and yours too. You can use a little bit of that. You can also get about the same amount of energy if we tap into our muscle tissue. There's glycogen stored in there as well. There's more than there is in the liver, and we can tap that out too if we want. We'll feel yucky. We won't perform our best, but we can fuel our cells using these backup systems. So again, if I'm not fueling myself with glucose, I have to fuel my cells somehow, so we have a choice to make. If you were your body, what backup tank would you use? It's not a trick question. Fat, absolutely. I can get double the amount of energy, okay? And who doesn't want to get rid of a lot of fat, especially in a fitness challenge? So, yeah, you would think that this would be the no-brainer. When my body is short on glucose, that I just go into my fat cells. The problem is, although it seems really simple, if we have trained our body incorrectly, then although it makes sense, your body is trained to say, no way. You're going to hold on to that stored fat, and your body's going to say, okay, go ahead and feel yucky. Have the shakes. Be impatient. Don't focus very well today. And they're going to steal that energy from your muscle glycogen and liver glycogen. Now, how do you know if you've been training right or wrong, if your body's burning fat or not? I'll give you a really good clue. If you regularly go more than 4 hours from when you wake up to when you go to bed, that's your day. In your typical day, so remember that worksheet that you completed? If you can find pockets of time where you normally go longer than 4 hours without fueling, then it's more than likely you've been training in this what we call survival mode or starvation mode sometimes. And you don't have to look like you're starving to be metabolically operating in this capacity. Make sense? The other key to this survival mode, this third picture that I've been painting or been drawing for you, the other key is, again, to the point that our bodies are really well equipped and really, really smart. We have cravings, right? What do you crave? Carbs, I've heard. What else have I heard? Carbs? Crunchy, sweets. I think I heard salty. Yes, yes, yes. If you peel back all of your personal preferences for what we find ourselves craving regularly, something will come to mind. And I want to remind you before I reveal what it is, I want to remind you the statement that I made a few times earlier today. And I said, anything that you put in your mouth, whether it's carbs, protein, and fat, at one pace or another, remember that statement? At one pace or another, will be digested, broken down, and hit your body in the form of blood glucose, or hit your blood in the form of glucose. Okay, when you crave something, it's on purpose. You're craving something because metabolically you're operating in this third picture scenario, survival mode it's often referred to as, and you're craving glucose. And so what you crave is your personal individualized preference for nothing more than a simple carbohydrate. Why? Because of those energy nutrients that I outlined earlier, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, carbohydrates, and especially simple or refined carbohydrates, are the quickest hit of glucose. So you might prefer chocolate, you might prefer chips, you might prefer pretzels. I don't care. When I peel back the title, it's simple carbohydrates. It's a refined, processed, grain-based choice because that's the quickest hit of glucose, and your body knows you need glucose, and it will send you cravings. Make sense? Okay. Now, let's digest that for a second. And let's go back to the slides. The next couple of slides that I put into this, this deck are really just words around the pictures that I drew. So I won't dwell on these too much. In fact, you can skip through this next one. Okay, and the next one. There we go. So let's bring this into practical application here. And my hope is that you're thinking about this as well and thinking about applying these concepts to you and reflecting on your worksheet exercise and looking at where are some opportunities. Within my calorie allotment, am I strategically putting my calories in a way that's helping my success or hurting my success? Because as I hope you heard loud and clear, it's not all about calories. Calories are important and you've got to find that balance. But the next step is the most important step for lasting results lifelong. And that becomes the training mechanism. And if you have found at this stage that you've been training maybe against your metabolism or your habits are working against you in this, according to these concepts, the opportunity is you can turn it around. You can retrain with consistency and regular application. So you're not doomed. You can retrain, and it's beyond the math calculations. That's important, but most of us get that. And at this stage, most of us have been through weight loss plans, different challenges, and had some great short-term success. But if you want to make it long-term, we've got to understand that deeper metabolic effect. Okay, so let's look at Carol. And let's think about Carol's typical day. And I'm just trying to make this, this isn't going to be exactly to you, but your challenge is kind of think about how this might apply to you. So Carol's typical day is she has black coffee, she works out in the morning, has lunch with maybe some coworkers, or we can change this to say neighbors, whatever you want to say. But the important point is she overeats. And I put restaurant there and because I'm making an assumption that we're probably going to eat more at a restaurant, that's generally speaking. And then she's got a long afternoon, has some dinner, nibbles as she prepares. Yes, we can relate to that. And then maybe there's a snack before bed, something like that. No big deal. Okay, so next slide, please. How is Carol feeling? Probably a lot like we've shared already that we feel at different times throughout the day. She might be feeling very tired in the afternoon. She might be feeling a little shaky during her morning workout after some black coffee, although energized from the caffeine. She might be grouchy, impatient. You can see the list in front of you, but there might be all of these feelings at different times throughout her window of day. So how do I unleash the magic? How do I train my metabolism to work for me and not against me? Right here is the key. Here's the template. How you fill the blanks is less important than what I have right up here on the slides. Here's the secret sauce. When you wake up and when you go to bed, that is your plan. You don't, what I want to encourage you is to make this your plan, not Dr. Oz's plan or somebody else's because they said to stop eating at 6. Don't. This is your plan. How do you want to strategically train your metabolism to work for you? Within the first hour of waking up, plan to put something in fuel up within the first hour of waking up on purpose. Now, You did not hear me say, and you'll never hear me say, eat breakfast within the first hour of waking up. I want to make sure you're clear on that. I don't care what you call it. It doesn't have to be breakfast. When you say breakfast, when I say breakfast, we all have a picture of what's painted in our head. I don't care. I just know you need energy within the first hour of waking up, because metabolically, you need to turn your system on. You need to tell your body, start burning calories at a higher level. I'm awake now. How you do it? You trigger that with calories, with energy. So could it be a cheese stick? Could it be a glass of orange juice with my vitamins in the morning? Absolutely. Different things are going to leave you feeling differently, of course. So you've got to know your circumstances. When am I working out? When do I need that lasting energy? All of those things are how you need to personalize this, but the template remains the same. So as I said, step one, within the first hour of waking up, plan to put some energy in. If you want to call it breakfast, wonderful. If you don't, wonderful, but put some energy in there. Yes, great question, and I'll get to that too. The question was, before you work out, should you put energy in? And my answer was yes. And I'm going to stop there and go back to my picture and kind of explain why I answered yes right now before I forget, okay? So again, should we put some fuel in before my morning workout? Yes is the answer, and here's why. Let's go back to our scenario here. Let's say it's first thing in the morning, and so here's my blood sugar, okay? You know, maybe a little bit low by now, because I'm assuming you didn't wake up for 8, 10, 6 hours, and so you haven't eaten, you haven't fueled, so your blood glucose, your blood sugar is probably on the lower end of that optimal zone. All right, and so now I'm gonna go work out. And so what does that do? That demands glucose. My muscle tissue is demanding glucose at a higher level than if I just woke up and read the newspaper or something like that, okay? So with higher demands and no glucose in, what's fueling that workout? Your storage tanks. And probably, if you've had some erratic eating patterns, then specifically your liver glycogen and your muscle glycogen. So ideally, what we want to do is get into the habit, not just when I work out in the morning, but create a habit. Again, it's a training effect, all right? So if we put some glucose intentionally in the morning, then, and so what that is might change depending on if I'm going to do my workout in the morning. Depending on the intensity of your workout, the duration of your, all sorts of factors related to your workout will determine what's going to sit best in my tummy for that workout, for my performance in that workout. So again, you can gauge that. It can be a variety of different things, but energy nonetheless, to trigger your metabolism, to start, let go of this stored fat. Let this fat fuel that workout. You have to teach your body how to use those stores, and you teach it through your habits. Make sense? Yeah. If you've trained your body and you eat every 2 to 4 hours, I want to hear myself say the question again. So the question was, if you've been training and you've been eating regularly every 2 to 4 hours, and then you wake up and you want to work out, tell me again. More than likely. Okay, great question. So then if you're trained right, the question is, if you've trained right, then could you just work out before you eat, because then your body is trained to burn fat? In theory, yeah, that might make sense. Again, it all depends on timing in my rule book, and I would encourage that early morning fuel. I would still encourage it as a habit, just habit strength. Yep. Any other questions before I dig in further? Okay, so within the first hour of waking up, we've hit the calories in, the energy in. Now let's go a little bit deeper. Again, you define your day when you wake up and when you go to bed. And then you need to, again, step 2 in this, training mechanism for your metabolism is to plan to put more energy in every 2 to 4 hours during your waking day. Now, is it 2? Is it 4? I don't know. You tell me. Are you a growing person? Then it's more on the 2 hour. If you're pregnant, more on the 2 hour end of the thing. If you're an adult trying to manage your weight, then I push it to the 3.5 to 4 hour end of the spectrum. If I'm a competitive athlete or a performance athlete, I'm more on the 2.5 hour of the spectrum. So again, where within that 2 to 4 really is based on your circumstances, your realities, your needs, and your demands. But the template remains solid. So on a vacation day, on a workout day, I mean, it's all the same rules are applied. But you just need to figure out, is it 2 or is it 4? Okay? All right. And then the key, the last bullet here is very key, and that is, plan to put in only enough to get you through the next 2 to 4 hours. And I think sometimes that's the biggest challenge as we think about our healthy eating plan. And how do we do that with all of the social cues out there and social triggers and social norms? How do we manage that? And my philosophy is you're in charge of what goes in. And so how you can be the gatekeeper around that. It's tricky. I absolutely agree it's tricky, but it's not impossible. And yes, it does buck what we know as our social norms. Like, we eat because it's noon, and that's my lunch hour. Well, sometimes we can be creative, and I've got all sorts of examples around that we can touch on if that's interesting later. But this provides the template for a healthy eating, feel great along the way, meet my weight loss short-term goals, and more importantly, make them stick for life. If I can adopt eating patterns with this template, this is the magic. Next slide. Okay, so let's go back to our friend Carol. There's her typical day. What might she do differently? Do you see some pardon? Bring your own lunch, split it with the friend, all sorts of different practical strategies that Carol could incorporate. There's no one perfect cookie cutter approach to this. There's so many ways to apply this same theory. And you can go online, there's tons of meal plans. And again, the important thing is timing and how much. And ensuring that you're plating enough to get you through the next 2 to 4 hours, but you're not risking going overboard and putting yourself into this, depositing into your fat tank all the time. Because as you can see, these scenarios work together. And when I overeat, I not only feel low energy, lethargic, and so forth, and I'm making a deposit into my fat tank, but then I might go long periods of time, more than 4 hours, and not eat. And I hope you've heard me that, we're kidding ourselves if we think that energy, that excess energy that we just put in, is just floating around waiting for us to get to it. If you're not using it within the next 2 to 4 hours, it's going into the fat tank. So it's not, oftentimes we say, oh, I'm going to load up now because I'm not going to get a chance to eat till after soccer practice or after ballet or after whatever, 5-6 hours down the road or down the day. Again, you're setting yourself up to fall into this pattern. Now, let me clarify. Does this happen one time when I overeat? Does this happen one time metabolically when I miss a meal? Absolutely not. You heard me say over and over again, it's a training. It's a training. It's not a sporadic, you didn't get, your metabolism isn't one bad day or one bad vacation. It's not gonna all of a sudden turn to fat. It's not how it works. It's habits, it's training. And so that's why I say the opportunity in front of us is you can retrain it just like it was trained before, okay? If this is very different for you, then there's an opportunity to retrain. Okay. So ideas for Carol, and then, just a sample. This is not a model, like, go and eat this way. That's not my message at all. This is just a sample of how one might think about applying these concepts to someone like Carol. So she adds a little bit in the morning. Maybe it's some milk in her coffee. Maybe it's creamer in her coffee. Maybe it's a banana with her coffee. Who knows? Or like I said, a cheese stick or a bowl of cereal. You fill in the blank. But it's calories. And it's calories that's within her boundaries. Remember, calories count. You can't forget about your calories, but the point is to be strategic in how you put them in. Don't just dump them in and woohoo, I met my calorie goal. Strategically put them in on purpose so that you can manage your blood glucose. That's the key. My message is not every 2 to 4 hours belly up to the trough. No. Within your calorie allotment, have a managed size meal or snack or whatever. And so again, you can see the example of Carol. She found that gap between the early morning and lunch and put a snack bar in there. Or again, you can all sorts of examples for how you can fill the blanks, but it's about the template, the rhythm, the pace around your eating schedule. That's really important. The routine is really important for the metabolic effect. Next slide. So, tips and tricks. How do you know that enough is enough, is the right amount for you? Yes, we can calorie count. Yes, there's all sorts of apps that can help you gauge your progress against your calorie levels and see where you're at during the day. Again, in the spirit of keeping everything simple, here's a few that I love to use, and I've gotten a lot of momentum when I use these. Why? Because they're simple and they're non-burdening. So, at mealtime, some of the tips that I want to introduce to you are the peace sign meal. I'll simply put, you can see it on the slide here. Really, it's a way to balance that intake. You heard me talk about the glucose, and when you eat something, it's digested, broken down, and it rises, the blood glucose level rises. We call that your glycemic response. When you have a slow, gradual glycemic response, that's a good thing. You can get that slow, gradual glycemic response by choosing foods that are more whole grain, whole fruits, whole vegetables, okay? Those kinds of things, because of the fiber, they're harder for you and I to digest, and therefore that process of blood glucose rising is much slower and more gradual. That's a good thing for metabolism, for appetite control, for a lot of things. That's a really good bonus. But at mealtime, it becomes a little trickier because there's more than one food choice. So how we combine our food choices becomes a trick at mealtime. This is a simple tool that I use to help manage that glycemic load from a variety of foods. How do we ensure that the glycemic load of that meal is such that it will promote long-lasting energy, long-lasting release of blood glucose? Make sense? And so the way I do that is we do, fruits and vegetables, grain-based food choice, always anchored with a protein. Protein is one of those foods that's a little bit more difficult for our bodies to digest and break down. Therefore, it naturally slows and pulls that glycemic response down. So when we put a protein with a simple carbohydrate like cheese and crackers, celery and peanut butter, that combination is magic because it's got the carbohydrate and the protein. Together, that's a nice, long-lasting snack. It's going to stay with you. Your appetite will be controlled, and that's going to stay with you for a couple of hours. More than just the celery alone or the apple alone or the cracker alone. Those are a little bit more simple carbohydrate in nature. And what that means is quick rise in glucose, quick release. Sometimes when I'm talking about these concepts, if I paint a picture for you, it can resonate. So I'll use a bonfire for you as a visual. And simple carbohydrates are like putting kindling on a bonfire. Okay? If your bonfire is your metabolism and you want to keep your fire going, if you're putting kindling, pretzels, licorice, bagel, they're all low fat, right? And you can manage their calories, so they're not bad food choices, but they're not going to stick with you for very long either. So again, they're going to be quick hits, quick kindling on that fire. They're going to give you energy, and then you're going to feel hungry within an hour. And you know what happens when we feel hungry? We get impatient, we start feeling lousy, and we feel deprived. And then we feel bad about our eating plan. So we can position this to where we're loading our plates, loading our meals more with a combination of the right logs on your bonfire to keep that fire burning longer. Make sense? The kindling on the fire makes a little bit of sense. Okay. All right. I also love to use handfuls as visuals. So pull out your hand for me. Look at it. Your hand is structured and directly aligned to your body size, your bone structure, and therefore, believe it or not, your body's needs. So your hand can be a very cool way to guide your choices in the moment. You'll never leave it in the other purse or the other wallet or the other pair of jeans. You'll have it with you to visually use for so many things. So again, is it really a quarter cup? I don't know. I don't care. But it's the right size for you in the moment, and you've got a visual guide for you. All right? So there are so many. I can calculate meal plans till I'm blue in the face. They never work long term because they're never where you need them at the point of choice. So that's why I love to use handfuls. So how do we know at mealtime, again, how do we know that I'm plating enough food to last me the next 2 to 4 hours and I'm not risking going overboard? So again, I bring you back to that peace sign meal, that peace sign plate that I have up here. And the circle is to give you a visual of a plate, and it's balanced in such a way to promote that slow glycemic response. So we have your fruits and vegetables, we have your grains, and we have a protein at every meal, a protein choice at every meal. That combination, we know that will promote a nice slow glycemic response. So how much of each of those? A couple of servings, maximum amount at mealtime that I recommend, a couple servings from your fruits and vegetables, complemented with a couple servings from grains, preferably whole grains, but grains, always anchored with a protein. So really 5 handfuls of food, your size handfuls of food. This is your plan. It's not about your neighbor, your husband, your kid, your whatever. Your hand size determines your needs. So that's a tool that I love to use. It also applies to your family. You can plate your kids' plates based on their hand sizes, their body size, their body's needs. And you know what else? Expect them to get a little hungry in a couple of hours. That's A-okay. All right? That's a good thing. Okay, next slide. So now snacking. Snacking is a beast in and of itself. And so I don't like to use handfuls to guide as a general guide for people around snacks. Instead, this is where I'll get a little bit into calorie counting, and I'm not a fan of calorie counting personally, so I'm not going to encourage it a ton. But I don't like to use handfuls. A good snack, though, if we remind ourselves, step back away. What's the purpose of a snack? Snack is really to bridge the gap between meals. So here we go. We've got our blood glucose here. Bear with me here down below. I don't know if you can see this. Here's my blood glucose optimal range. Ideally, throughout the day, I want to manage my blood glucose like this throughout the day with my food choices. All right, so here's a meal, and here's a snack. And here's a meal, and there's a snack. So you can see at different eating bouts throughout the day, I'm managing my blood glucose. So snacks, therefore, with this in mind, I like to use the guidance snacks about 150 calories. Always make sure there's 5 grams of protein for every 100 calories in your snack. So let's trickle that out a little bit. What does that mean in real food terms? Well, it could mean a 100-calorie pack of Chips Ahoy and a cheese stick. That can fit the rules. It could be a fun size peanut M&M. That fits the rule. It could also be an apple and a tablespoon of peanut butter. It could also be a protein bar, like a snack bar that meets those requirements. Kashi, Fiber One, there's a ton of them out there. But you can use this guide to help gauge in the grocery store which ones are going to give me the best lasting energy, which ones have that 5 grams of protein per every 100 calories. And again, in the spirit of bars, remind yourself when you're having them, is this a meal or is this a snack? Because a lot of bars are over 150, 200 calories, and that's okay. If you're using it as a meal replacement, that's A-okay. But if you're using it as a snack, just step back, kind of do a little test on yourself. When did I last eat my meal? When's my next meal? Okay, is this all right? And assess that for yourself right there. But having that protein at that pace that I've outlined here is a really good gauge to ensure. Why? To make sure that glycemic response, that's what we're all about, that balancing that glycemic response. Because if we can control that blood glucose, we can manage how we feel, we can manage our appetite, and ultimately we can train our metabolism to work for us, not against us. Okay, next slide. So let's cool down. Are we ready to cool down? Oh, you guys. Are you ready to cool down? Okay, let's pull it all together. So what did I say? What I want you to take home today is that calories do count because they form our boundaries. They form our framework. But how you put your food in and make those food choices within that framework is really important. And your ability to train your metabolism to meet your weight and fitness goals. So putting energy in within the first hour is really important. Ensuring that you're putting it in every 2 to 4 hours during your waking day is just as important. Eating only enough to get you through the next 2 to 4 hours is a magic ingredient as well. And finally, I touched on this in the end a little bit, ensuring that when you put it in, you're making food choices in such a way that you're promoting that slow glycemic response. Lasting energy is what it's all about. Feel good along the way is what it resonates out to. Why is that important? Okay, next slide. Okay, so let's go back to your worksheet. You did some assessment in the beginning. You looked at your time zones. Hopefully by now you've thought about some opportunities for yourself in terms of your eating routine, because that's what we've really focused on today is the eating routine for the metabolic effect, okay? All right, so on the back side, there's a few questions. I want you to take a look at those questions. And just again, this is for your eyes only. Put a little check mark or next to those things that you can answer yes to, those statements that you can answer yes to. Now, those questions are really just, when we think of, what works in weight control, there's a lot of claims out there that really aren't rooted in research. So what these are simply statements that we know matter and we know work. And if you're practicing these types of habits regularly, then these are what can help determine how you fill the blanks. So we've talked a lot about the template and why that eating template is important, all right? The timing and the amounts. But these habits on your worksheet can help to determine how you fill those blanks, okay? Are you choosing those wholesome types of foods? Are you getting the right amount of fruits and vegetables? Are you limiting salt? Are you limiting added sugar in ways that resonate to you personally? All right, so if you're applying those behaviors, those habits, then that's wonderful, and you want to continue to do that. If you're not, if there's some that you weren't able to check yes to, then I would suggest those might be a really good opportunity to start focusing in on, because that's personally where there might be some gaps, and therefore some opportunity. And so you've got the template. Now it comes down to fill in the blanks. And these habits can help you identify where are my opportunities and fill in the blanks. What do I need to focus on? Where do I need to focus my efforts and my energy? Okay, next slide. Okay, so my final thoughts as we really finish our cool down. We're stretching it out right now. My final thoughts on this, hopefully I want you to capture a few actions that resonate with you as right here in the moment so you don't forget. And again, this is for you to take with you and hopefully be a very useful tool for you. These concepts that I introduced to you today are not bestsellers. They will never be bestsellers, but they are never, ever, ever going to go out of style because they're simply how the human body works. Okay? And you've heard pieces and parts of these concepts that I've introduced today in a gazillion diet books. They're all out there. But again, what I think that you have the opportunity to do is make it your own. The concepts are solid. They won't change. They won't change as you age. They will only become more important. Because as we age, your metabolism naturally slows down. So the opportunity in front of you is to slow down the slowdown. Make sense? You can do it. And there's all sorts of exercise strategies that you're learning, I'm sure, through the Infinity Fitness Challenge, but also eating strategies can be very helpful in shifting your metabolism. Is there a magic food that makes you burn calories faster and makes your metabolism go up? No. No. It's habits. It's habits with your food choices. Of course, there are some foods that take a greater amount of calories or energy to digest. So in that moment, you're burning more calories, digesting of celery versus something else. But really, come on, let's look at the habits. Let's look at the behaviors. That's where you get power in training your metabolism, not a onesie-twosie food choice. It's about your habits and what your norm is. So what I want to encourage is to recognize that you have the power. You have all the tools. Now it becomes, how do I map this out? And then I follow it. I try it out. How does it feel? And you're always saying, can I live this way? Is it disruptive for my loved ones around me? Can I get my work done? Can I get all these kinds of things to help you assess how you can live with this long term. If you can't, if it's causing disruptions around you, abandon it. Adapt a new habit or get creative on that. So it's all you. There's not one cookie cutter approach to how to do this right. The idea is take the fundamentals and learn to apply them to yourself. Personalize them for you and you'll be successful. I do a lot of work with international travelers and you know, this theory, it doesn't change as you cross over into India or into China. Yes, how your protein choices will change, but your body has the same needs. Your blood glucose has the same response. Biochemically, you're still working and metabolizing foods in the same way. So that's why this doesn't change. And that's why I love it so much. And to the last bullet here, I think that the spirit of what I've introduced to you is to keep it simple. We don't have to overcomplicate this healthy eating gig. It doesn't have to be as hard. There's some no-brainers like get your 5 a day, choose more whole grain. We've heard them all. And they're important. But again, there's something deeper to it. And I hope what you heard today helps you think about these choices at a deeper level. And also, I really want to give the power back to each and every one of you, because no one can do this for you. Like I said, I can map out a meal plan, and there's a ton of sample menu plans out there, and you can follow them. But what happens when you forget it, or you forgot to go to the grocery store? Life's going to throw you curveballs. So if you understand how your body works and how your body responds, then you can make those last-minute choices in the airport when you forgot to pack a snack. You can make those choices because you understand how food is digested and metabolized and what your needs are, and you can make the choice. I'll tell you, the worst thing that you can do for your metabolism is to get into that habit where you're regularly going more than 4 hours during your day and without putting energy in. Again, you can drink it, you can chew it, I don't care. But if you're not putting calories in regularly, dripping them in throughout the day on purpose, then you're going to get back into that survival mode, and that can be really detrimental for folks like yourselves that are really striving to be successful in a fitness challenge immediately, but long-term lasting weight loss. You want results that are going to last. That's the important stuff. And that's why the metabolism effect is so important to really understand. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. I want to share with you, Kelly Biggs from the Menu Manager is in the back tonight, and she's got some samples of some fresh, yummy, glycemically balanced spinach salads. And the spirit of what Kelly wants to share with you tonight is the fact that, you know, it doesn't have to be hard. Use those types of things that you have around you. You don't have to do a huge refrigerator or pantry overhaul to make this work. Remember the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, make good choices, but 20% of the time, let life creep in. Have your cake, okay? But just know how to you're in charge and remain, have control over at what amount you're letting some of these want foods sneak in. And if the majority of the time you're focusing on those need foods, you're golden. So I welcome you to try some samples from Kelly Biggs, and I'll open it up to any questions that you might have at this point. Yeah.
You really made me think about dinner.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times for me, I work 2 jobs.
Yes.
One job, another job, I get home, I eat really.
Yes.
You said if you don't use it, it turns to fat.
Yes. Yes.
Use it. So
Yes.
that's one of my big mistakes.
Okay.
I'm used to that.
Okay, so meaning after dinner. So after I've eaten and I don't use it. Okay, so what do you mean don't use it?
Well,
Like maybe you're.
I don't work out after that.
Okay.
I pretty much go to bed.
Okay. Remember when you did that in-body challenge? Did you do the in-body? Okay. When you do that in-body challenge, one of the factors that was assessed for you is something that called REE or RMR, and that's your resting metabolic rate or resting energy expenditure, no matter whatever it's referred to. What that is, if you were in a coma, you would still need that many calories a day. So these needs that I've been referring to is not just when you work out. So after dinner, and you eat between jobs, and you're going to your next job, to drive to your next job, to focus on whatever it is that you're focusing on, the tasks related to, that burns energy. And together, those are what we call your resting metabolic rate. So it's so much more than just your workouts. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because we often think we just need to fuel up when we're working out. That's not the truth. In fact, if we get into that rut, then you're really going to be going into that survival mode. If you're only eating when you need to exercise, that's what I mean. So my advice to you is dinner. I would just make it, depending on what your second job is, those 2 to 4 hours after you're eating, how active that second job is, would determine how big. Okay, so if it's fairly sedentary, yeah, then a 300 calorie meal might be perfect for you. Yeah, I would. I mean, and that's without seeing the rest of your day, but just generally speaking, knowing that you're fairly sedentary after that, lighten it up. You need to fuel your cells, but you don't need to overfuel, especially if you're not being very active. Another key concept that I didn't mention yet, but this question sparked it. So when we overeat, and we all will do it, even after tonight's talk, we'll all overeat once in a while. So when we overeat and we know that we put more energy in, therefore my blood glucose is way high, one of the strategies that you could consider is within the 2 to 4 hours, 2 to 3 hours after you overate, move. Create a demand for glucose. Now, are you going to have your best run? No. You're going to be burpy and gassy and all that kind of stuff. But you can vacuum, or maybe that's when you turn on some music and dance. I don't know, but move. We naturally, after we overeat, we just want to undo the top button and just feel, tired. Like we've all shared already, we feel very tired. But what I want to challenge you on is if you know you just overdid it, and again, we know why, what's happening in your body, you can make the choice to move. Go for a walk. Like I said, do chores around the house. Do something that's creating a demand for glucose. Why? Because then you can lessen how much you're dumping into fat. Make sense? Okay. And I'm oversimplifying human biochemistry. You know that. But I want you to grab onto some of these concepts, okay? And understand how we burn calories and how we can train our body to use our fuel sources most effectively for our mission. Other questions?
How do you feel about protein shakes?
How do I feel about protein shakes is the question. And I'm a fan. Protein shakes, protein bars, I'm a fan. Again, if it fits within your framework. So I don't think protein builds muscle. I don't think that. I think protein is a very important nutrient. We need it in moderation. And I always encourage protein at every meal or snack. And so if you do that in the form of a shake or a bar, great. I personally use them, again, it depends on your circumstances. And for me, it's busy and my job and so forth, and the types of tasks that I do in my job, I'm not at a place where to stop and eat a meal is a little less likely. So I'm serving a lot, and I'm in a service role. So anyway, you guys have your own circumstances too. So those can work. And I know that's a strategy that I personally apply in this phase of my life to be able to meet my demands and not hassle with some of the other things. I cherish my family time, and I make that my meal time. And during my workday, that's when I find creative solutions to get the job done. Food is fuel. And to me, I've adapted that philosophy. I don't need it to taste good. It's got a job to do, period, when I'm not with my family. So that's my philosophy. That's not your philosophy. That's my philosophy. And so, but I just want to share it with you as an example. There's no one cookie cutter way to do this. There's a lot of different ways that you can adopt the principles and be successful. Yeah.
In a protein bar, any guidelines on the sugar grams you should watch out for?
Yeah. Yeah. The question is, when you're looking at protein bars, any guidelines on sugar grams? And I would say, regardless of protein bars, anything, if I'm choosing any type of food, minimize the added sugars. And that's just a core behavior. But they're going to come. And some of these prepackaged foods, they're going to come. And so the theory is less than 25% of your day's carbohydrate intake should be sugar. So there's some guidelines out there specifically on sugar, but I would look at a few, and I would look at calories. Am I using this as a meal replacement, or am I using this as a snack, first of all? So that would define which ones meet my calorie needs. Is it 300 calories or a 100 calorie bar? Okay. Then from there, the grams of protein, the grams of sugar, fiber is another perk. So if I can get more fiber in those protein bars, that's a perk. And I would choose the one that has the least amount of added sugar. But in any of those packaged convenient foods, there's going to be some added sugar. So just choose wisely there. I don't have a set number to give you around that. Yeah, question. Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. Can you have just your almond milk? That's a great source of protein. Yeah, your almond milk would be a good one. But there's, you might be, you can't have dairy, you said? Okay. Yeah, it's tricky. Right. There's lots of protein powders that you can add to different snack oatmeals or snack cottage cheeses. You're going to have some, but not. I wouldn't say that's enough. Beans, are beans okay with you? Okay, beans are a really good protein source. So like soybeans. Is there what? Yeah, edamame is a really good one. So is there too much? That one, it could depend. So there's some research that suggests soy is really good, especially in menopausal women, and so you want more of that to help with some of the hormonal control. So it depends is my answer, and it depends specifically on your stage of life and therefore your needs hormonally, whether or not there can be too much or too little. But in general, that might be a really good go-to for you. And then there's also some of the plant-based proteins like Boca burgers or those kinds of things that can be 60-calorie snacks here and there. Too much oil, you said? Okay. Oh, sure. Yeah. It's going to trade off. But I think like your almond milk alternative, I think is a really good go-to. Egg whites, if you can do that, that might be a really good one too. Like you can get creative. Again, if you're not real fancy with your food, you can put some egg white, like egg beaters even, or something like that in a coffee mug, 3 minutes in the microwave, and you have like little scrambled eggs. So, I mean, again, it depends on you and how fancy, you need to be with your food choices, but egg whites might be another good one. Hard-boiled eggs can be a really good go-to snack too. Yeah, question. Of how much fat you should have? What do you say about nuts? Oh, yes. Great question. Okay, so the question is about how much fat should you have in your diet, and then second part is how do nuts fit into that? And so generally speaking, so your calories, you have a set calorie level that you all know that you need each day for optimal health. The rule of thumb is no more than 35% of your day's calories should come from fat. Now here's where it gets a little trickier. Of the fat, of that 35% or less, 35%, there's different types of fats. And this gets into the nut part of your question. So there's different types of fats. There's fats that are what we call monounsaturated. There's fats that are polyunsaturated. There's fats that are saturated, and there's fats that are trans fats, they're called. So let me just cut to the chase to say that the healthiest fat, the majority of your 30 to 35% of day's calories fat should come from that monounsaturated type of fat. Monounsaturated examples of monounsaturated types of fats are things like olive oil, canola oil, your omega-9s, omega-6s, omega-3 types of oils, fatty fishes, those kinds of things. Peanut oil. Okay, those are examples of monounsaturated types of fats. So why do they have an advantage? Believe me, they're not lower in calories, they're not lower in fat grams. The advantage in monounsaturated fats is simply how the body metabolizes that type of fat. So the advantage is that if I use the majority of my fat from those monounsaturated sources, and if I use it consistently as part of my normal eating routine, then I will see a positive impact on my blood cholesterol and my heart health. I will see specifically a decrease in my bad cholesterol, or LDL, and an increase in my good cholesterol, or HDL. So that's the advantage that they have. That next grade 2 or second place in terms of the fat would be polyunsaturated. Those are plant-based, like sunflower oil, safflower oil, corn oil. Those are examples of polyunsaturated fats. Those are still better for you than the others. They're not as good as monos. And the reason they're not as good as monos, again, isn't because there's more fat or more calories. No, they're equal in fat and calories. When I use polyunsaturated fats, then I will see a positive impact on my LDL. My bad cholesterol will go down. But polyunsaturates, there's no evidence that they show any improvement in my good cholesterol, my HDL. So again, that's the edge that monounsaturated have. So 35% or less of your day's energy or calories should come from fats. The vast majority of those, if at all possible, your monounsaturated fats, like olive oil, peanut oil. So nuts are an example of a primarily monounsaturated type of fat. So there is fat. It's a good type of fat, heart healthful type of fat. What? Okay. Okay, you guys. It's about 8 o'clock. And again, we've got Kelly Biggs back there with some samples. I got to go home and do my mom duties now. So I appreciate you coming out here and letting me share my passion with you. I welcome some questions, and I think I'm going to, on Facebook, answer some questions with them. Yeah, so if you have some questions, if you're on Facebook, I don't know how that works for you guys, if you are all doing that or not. But anyway, I would welcome them. I have my contact information, my personal contact information right here. So if you have further questions, feel free to email me, and I'll do my best to get back with you. Thank you for your time. What? Oh, yeah. Oh, there's some prizes that have been drawn or will be drawn.
Yep, they're back there.
And the prizes are back there at the table. You're welcome.
Yeah.